Author's note. All languages have been translated for ease of reading. Suffice to say, the magic universal translator needs to calibrate to the new language. So when the aliens first meet, they won't be able to understand each other, despite it appearing that they can. Quarka was having an unusual day. It wasn't often that new species were the ones making contact with him. It was normally him making contact with them. So he was certainly on the back foot right from the get-go. What was even more unusual was the fact that his sensors hadn't even registered the alien craft until it was practically next to him. In space terms anyway, it was still several kilometers away in reality. The ship gave off absolutely no drive signature, nor any reactor emissions. He must admit, it was quite impressive, a ship with basically no sensor profile, certainly made for an excellent exploratory craft. No need for large defense weapons on board, since it was unlikely to be detected. What was more strange, however, was the fact the vessel's shuttle had a sensor profile the size of a goddamn battlecruiser while under thrust. If he didn't know any better, he'd say it was using old-fashioned chemical engines. Wait a second. It was using chemical engines. The hell? It was generally accepted that for a species to reach a stage where it would develop a faster-than-light drive, there were several different potential ones. They had to have both colonized their home system and moved far past chemical rocketry. This new species certainly were some oddballs. Shuttle approaching docking bay 2, please authorize. Authorize tractor beam assisted docking of the shuttle approaching bay 2, ALIS. Quarka instructed his ship's automated linguistic interface system. Authorized, attempting lock now. Lock successful, shuttle has ceased propulsion. Please proceed to docking bay 2. Warning. Warning. Weaponry signatures detected aboard shuttle in bay 2. Please don appropriate shielding before approaching shuttle. ALIS, elaborate on weaponry. Quarka requested, quickly turning on his personal shield belt as he approached bay 2. Basic chemical-based hand weaponry, shields should be set to setting 1 for maximum power efficiency. Quarka puzzled as he waited for the bay to repressurize. Most of the galactic community used laser or plasma-based weaponry as standard. They did far more damage and required shielding settings to be set at 14 at least to prevent the most basic of weaponry. In contrast, this species was still using antiquated chemical-based weaponry, which barely even required a shield setting of 1. This species was shockingly undeveloped for an FTL-capable race. The door slid open, revealing a quite horrifying sight. Bipedal mammals, about a third higher than him, who were completely hairless, except for what would appear to be small manes atop their heads and above their eyes, and some of the males appeared to have hair surrounding what Quarka could only guess to be their mouths. Quite a contrast to his own avian appearance. He had gray feathered wings protruding from his back, with each feather ending in a white tip. He looked remarkably like a griffin on 2 legs, with golden yellow fur covering his whole body and lion-like feet, tipped with claws used for gripping the edge of ledges on his homeworld's alpine peaks. He had monkey-like hands tipped with much shorter claws, used for catching prey animals or fruits from the trees that grew atop most mountains on his homeworld. Nonetheless, these aliens shocked him to his core. How did they keep themselves warm without any fur? How did they trap air close to their skin to keep themselves cool in summers, as mammalians did in the galactic community? Jesus Christ. I was expecting something less, straight out of mythology to be greeting us. One of the aliens said, clearly the leader of the group. Quarka began the age-old tradition of trying to explain to a new race that they needed to speak more so that the translator could calibrate. At least nowadays, they'd gotten around to creating a relatively understandable video for the newbies to watch, rather than having to pantomime what you wanted. Which often ended up just meaning the new race in their confusion calibrated the translator by accident. Quarka gestured towards the screen specifically set up in both docking bays for this exact purpose. What? You want us to watch the screen? Okay, you crazy alien, we'll watch the damn screen. No need to look so. Whatever it is you feel right now. Nkorka sighed in relief as the alien looked at the screen, triggering it to play the animation. Honestly, it was a pretty obvious animation. Two distinctly different species of person met up, a speech bubble appeared next to one in one alphabet, and another appeared next to the other in an obviously different font and alphabet. One held up a small device, the translator, and the other spoke into it constantly. Then once the translator calibrated, a green light shone from it, and the two people began to speak to each other, this time in the same font and alphabet. "Ah, I see, you want us to speak into that device until it goes green, then we'll be able to talk. Simple enough." Nkorka held up the translator, assuming the alien sentence was something understanding and affirmative. The alien leant into the translator and began speaking rapid gibberish, presumably random sentences that made little sense outside of the context. Nkorka patiently waited, having done this several times before with other races making first contact. The loud ringing sound accompanied by the green light on the translator indicated it was done calibrating. Already loaded with a full range of galactic community languages and able to be updated instantaneously with new ones whenever it connected to GAINet. It now officially belonged to the aliens and whoever they chose to be their ambassador to the galactic community. "Right, is that it then? You can understand us now," said the lead alien, looking expectantly at Nkorka. "That is correct, I am Nkorka, and on behalf of the galaxy, I would like to say, it's a pleasure to welcome yet another sapient race onto the galactic stage." "Well, it's a pleasure to meet you too, Nkorka. I'm Captain David Jackson of the Terran exploration vessel, Expedition. To my left is my first officer, Commander Luznasita. On my right is Ambassador Sir Avery Quinn, he's a civilian, so no rank there. Then behind me is Lieutenant Commander Valery Kosev, my ops officer. Then finally to his right is Lieutenant Commander Emiko Tanaka, my chief engineer. So we have a pretty varied group right here, mainly representatives from the 5 major nations on Earth, or Terra, as we Spacies like to call it. Oh, and forgive the handguns, standard military policy, to have a sidearm at all times." "Ah, I see, I guess I have no need of this then." Nkorka turned off his personal shield before it drained much more battery, then continued. "I must say, it is delightful to meet you all. I would presume you are the diplomat, Sir Quinn, so I shall get you hooked up with ALIS to discuss basic interstellar law. I've done this enough times to reliably say, you will find it both enlightening and entertaining." An android detached from the wall and approached the Terran ambassador, before politely guiding him away from the group, towards the door. "Well then, Nkorka, you have been a gracious host indeed. We were honestly expecting a lot more confusion between us before anything really got done. Seems like you have this first contact thing down to a science," Captain David said admiringly. "Oh yes, indeed, I have thus far made contact with 37 different races for the galactic community, yours will be the 38th. Before you ask, because I know you will ask at some point, I am indeed the only one aboard this ship. Apart from the robots maintaining the vessel, and ALIS, I am the only one aboard this vessel. Anyway, I feel compelled to ask, but how does your vessel have such a tiny sensor profile? I didn't detect it until you were practically next to my hull." "Well, that certainly explains as to the lack of a welcoming party. As for the sensor profile, it depends on how your sensors work. Ours detect our vessels just fine, but I expect they would, seeing as they're designed to. That being said, our vessel is probably so undetectable due to our lack of reactor emissions. I imagine you probably noticed that fact." "You are correct, Captain, it was quite shocking. Even our most efficient fusion plants do emit quite abundant amounts of waste." "I am noticing you seem rather confused, Captain. May I inquire as to why?" "Well, we haven't used fusion power in, well, decades, almost a century in fact." "You haven't used fusion power in decades? Then how do you power your ships, Captain? All races of the galaxy use fusion. Some are more efficient than others, sure, but they still do." What? Has no one harnessed anything else? Antimatter perhaps?" "Antimatter? Dear Lord, no, Captain. It is so inefficient to produce, add to that how volatile it is, and it's practically useless. Certainly it might make an excellent fuel source, but even the slight cutout of power and containment collapse leads to total annihilation. So certainly not. Then would it surprise you to learn, our ship runs entirely off of antimatter then, in Quarka. Our reactors are antimatter, our fuel is antimatter, though used in an unorthodox way. And Quarka fainted. When the poor avian awoke, the humans were in a state of semi-panic over his health, while one of the medic droids was hovering over him, attempting, without much success, to reassure the aliens that he was quite alright. He puzzled at the humans' behavior. Why is a race he's barely met so panicked over his health? Surely, it is of little concern to them. More than that though, that was genuine concern on their faces, not some kind of diplomatic facade. "I'm quite all right, you have no need to panic my friends," Quarka said as he stood up. "Oh, thank the Lord, you gave us a heart attack," David replied. Why such an extreme reaction to such a mundane comment? Antimatter is just so deadly that the shock that you were using it so extensively must have short-circuited my nerves. A common issue with my race we have yet to be able to correct. Fortunately, we only faint for a short time, so it is not much of an issue. You mentioned you used the antimatter as fuel in an unorthodox way. I see, an interesting evolutionary flaw. And yes, I did indeed mention that. Well. Did you notice the large plate on the back of our spacecraft? David replied somewhat cautiously, as he did not wish to cause the welcoming alien to faint again. I did indeed. I wondered what it was used for and assumed you had some kind of internal engine that doesn't produce exhaust. Now I am starting to suspect that is not the case, Captain. You would be correct. We launch antimatter bombs out the back of the spacecraft, then detonate them against the shielded plate to propel ourselves forward. What? You purposefully detonate doomsday weapons against the back of your ship as thrust. The saying Quarka was shocked would be an understatement. He was gobsmacked. And was quite frankly surprised he had not fainted yet. Why would a species purposefully detonate weaponry against their ship to propel themselves forward? Let alone literal planet-killing weapons. No wonder his ship hadn't detected the damn humans. His sensors weren't calibrated to detect antimatter detonations as a drive signature, or at all for that matter. Hell, he wouldn't be surprised if his sensors couldn't even detect antimatter itself. You are correct. We've done it for a while actually. Our early solar pioneers used fission bombs instead of antimatter, and then their children used fusion bombs, then antimatter bombs more recently. Admittedly, we've started phasing Orion drives out nowadays in favor of the new pion torches, which are far more efficient. But if we're honest, you can't beat a reliable Orion drive for simple reliability. I mean, there's literally like 4 moving parts in the whole thing: the shield, the launcher, and the bomb. That being said, pion torches are literally better in every conceivable way, more efficient, more thrust effective. They just cost a damn fortune in antimatter fuel to run. Though the new orbital super collider in orbit of Mercury is certainly helping our antimatter production. We can probably produce enough antimatter from it alone to fuel our whole civilization, plus a fleet of pion torch-based spacecraft. It was even worse than Quarka feared. This civilization hadn't just developed an undetectable drive by modern means, but they were mass-producing one of the deadliest substances known to galactic civilization. He must get these humans off his ship at once and inform the Council. These aliens could be the greatest threat to galactic peace and stability in the history of the galaxy. How fascinating. I must admit, however, that I have to sadly return to my homeworld to inform the Council of our meeting. And before you suggest accompanying me until it's written into law that you are a recognized sapient race, you basically have no rights within the Council. However, a welcome party will be sent to your home system the moment you've been written into law. Quarka had no idea what bullshit he was spinning, but he had to get away from this destructive race before they decided to take over his starship. It would give them unacceptable amounts of intel on the galactic community. That is understandable, my friend. Law can be both obtuse and confusing. Especially when you make new discoveries. I will return to my ship once the ambassador has rejoined us, then we'll activate our quantum drive and inform our own homeworld of this meeting. I will be delighted to convey your greetings. Nkorka stared at the human and stuttered, quantum drive. Wow, what's that? Not only had the aliens developed quite possibly the deadliest form possible for a propulsion system, somehow they had a faster than light drive that was quite possibly entirely and totally unknown to the rest of the galaxy. He would certainly have heard of a quantum drive before if it existed within the community. Oh, do you not use quantum drives for FTL travel? How strange. Our scientists theorized that all races must use such a principle to travel so as to overcome causality and relativity. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka, would you kindly explain the basic principles of our drive to the good diplomat here, then we shall be leaving. Seeing as if I am not mistaken, that is the ambassador just over there returning to us. Of course, sir. Tanaka replied to David before turning to the terrified avian. Basically, it works on the principle of using the quantum foam of the universe. Essentially generating momentary unlimited power just simply by particles in the drive existing. Unfortunately, this only lasts for a split second, so no free energy for us. But once the drive essentially possesses infinite energy, the speed of light sort of ceases to exist. We theorize that what actually happens is, the ship momentarily exists in every point in both space and time, simultaneously, allowing for us to re-emerge in a location of our choosing, once the universe reasserts itself over our spacecraft, cutting us off from the quantum foam of the universe. It takes a god-awful amount of power though, to both link us to the foam, and then re-emerge somewhere specific, rather than a random location in space and time. We literally have 2 antimatter generators that just sit and idle until we jump, just to power the damn thing. Not even to mention that those generators currently have to redline, quite literally, filling the whole magnetic bottle with a 50-50 matter-antimatter mix to run the drive. The navigation, you'd have to ask an expert about, since all I know is how the drive operates and how the fuck the navigation computer is meant to look and be calibrated. No idea how it determines where and when we exit FTL. We also don't try to assign any kind of temporal data to our computer, only nav data. Mainly because the universe really fucking doesn't like time travel, and if you want to emerge somewhere like that, you'd need the estimated energy stored in the black hole at the center of the galaxy to power the thing, and then some. Fortunately, our ship maintains some kind of memory of what time it came from, so it reasserts our location there, just like it would reassert our location if we didn't spend a crap ton of energy to rewrite that location memory. You have instantaneous faster than light travel? Nkorka asked, quite literally almost having an aneurysm from fear. Our drives take days or even weeks to travel just a few light years. Nkorka quickly shut up as he realized he just gave away another tactical secret to the aliens. Oh, well, that's a surprise. Well, I suppose we should probably leave now before we make you faint again. We'll expect the welcome fleet in a few weeks, I suppose. Once we have our rights, I would hope our governments would see what we can do about sharing our drives with you guys. I imagine being able to travel basically anywhere in the known universe instantly would be quite helpful. Anyway, Ambassador, I hope you enjoyed your experience. Nkorka here was just explaining basic interstellar law to us. He's planning on returning to his homeworld to inform the rest of the council wizard that he'd made first contact with us. Captain David interjected before turning to the ambassador. Ah yes, very good, Captain. I must say, these guys are very experienced in interstellar diplomacy. We could benefit to learn much from them. And I believe they could benefit a lot from us in both engineering and applied physics. Seeing as they lack even basic antimatter harnessing technologies. I foresee a very bright future between us and the galaxy at large. Nkorka was terrified. They were so good at their facade that the ambassador immediately presented a front of cooperation between the humans and the galaxy. He must get them off his ship immediately. Fortunately for him, Alice took the opportunity to ring his comm rather loudly and pointedly, possibly offering him an out. Seeing as his adrenaline levels were at an all-time high and his body was practically screaming its flight response at him. My apologies, that is my signal to leave. It has been a delight to meet you all, and I hope once the politics have been sorted out, I might meet you all again. I'll leave the hangar, so your shuttle can leave. I look forward to seeing you represented on the council. Stuttered Nkorka, getting more confident as he got further away from the insane humans. Captain David turned to his team as they boarded their shuttle and said, "Was it just me, or did he seem rather hurried to get rid of us? Like, really hurried by the end of it? If I didn't know better, I'd think he was absolutely terrified of us." Luz looked up from her seat piloting the shuttle and nodded in agreement, flicking on the auto dock as they approached their own docking bay. "I thought so too. By the end of it, if he was human, I would have said he was in full flight mode, his body wanting to absolutely leg it. Or I suppose fly it the fuck away from us. Can we all agree that we don't think whatever welcoming fleet they are going to send will be very welcoming?" "Agreed," came the collective response to the captain's statement, right as the thunk of the shuttle being grabbed by the docking arms penetrated the hull. The author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.